Hello, welcome to the Fairy Tale Unit. This particular clip is for The Frog Prince. If you look on the list there, on the YouTube playlist, the first video is a Frog Prince adaptation from the Fractured Fairy Tales, my Rocky and Bullwinkle show. That's what you're watching. Okay? As you are completing this DBI, or document-based inquiry, I want you to think about these things. What are the things each fairy tale could be trying to tell you about the society they're written for? There's a variety of different versions of the Frog Prince, so look at that. How does each fairy tale react to the supernatural? Why might that be? How does each fairy tale treat men or women and women? How is each fairy tale different depending on the place it's written? The same. What things do you notice about the Frog Prince that pop up in every version of the story, and what things are different? How are the movie clips, poems, and articles related to each story? Remember, you're looking for what makes something a fairy tale, and how does culture impact a story. So this is The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess who was dancing around and frolicking and playing with a golden ball, even though she was probably too old, but she was like, nah, I don't care. I do what I want. I'm a princess. So she's dancing and skipping in the garden and tossing the ball and just having a grand time. And she hears a croak and she panics because she thought she was alone and drops the ball into a well. And she's like, well, great. First of all, that was solid gold. Second of all, worst day ever. So she starts to cry because, like you do. So she's crying, and then the frog that scared her hops over and is like, hey, I can get that for you. And she's like, wait, you're a talking frog? And he is like, yeah, you got a problem with that? And she goes, no, I was just confused. And he says, okay, well, I can get that for you, but in exchange, I need you to do 3 things. And she's like, okay, what 3 things? And he's like, well, 2 of them I'm going to hold back. But one of them is I want you to let me be your best friend and live in the castle with you. And she's like, okay, sure, great, yeah, definitely. You can be my best friend. Yes, give me the ball. You're my best friend forever. Perfect. And the frog's like, promise? Just, yes. But this is behind her back, so the frog can't see. So the frog dives down, gets the ball, brings it back, and she's like, great. And she's so excited, she runs off, and the frog's hopping after her, and he's like, I can't keep up. I've got little legs. And she's like, haha, so long, sucker. So she's out, and she gets home. She's having dinner, and the frog is still there. And the frog's hopping along, trying to catch up. So she's eating dinner, and her dad's like, how was your day? And she's like, oh, great. And there's a knock at the door, and the servant's like, hey, there's this frog outside. And her dad's like, huh, weird. He says he knows the princess, and her dad's like, bring in the frog. So the frog hops on in, and he's like, hey, so he looks at the princess, and he's like, you promised that you'd be my best friend, and I could live with you. And she's like, yeah, I did. And he's like, yeah, that was request 1 and request 2. And she's like, ugh, fine. She's like, no, I'm not going to have a frog as my best friend. And the frog's like, but you promised. And her dad's like, you did promise. And she's like, oh, I should take the frog's side. And so they pick the frog up and they put him on the table. And he's like, I want to eat food off your plate. She's like, worst friend ever. But she promised, and that was his request. So there he is. And her dad's like, you promised. And she's like, oh, okay. So then it's time for bed. And the frog's like, I want to sleep on a pillow on your bed. And she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, I want a pillow by you. And she's like, I don't want that. And he's like, do you want to tell your dad? And she's like, ugh. So she picks the frog up like a slimy frog and puts it on the pillow. And the frog's like, great. Now finally my 3rd wish. I would like a goodnight kiss. And the princess is like, that's not happening. And he's like, you promised. And she's like, say that one more time. And he's like, but you promised. So she picks up the frog and chucks him against a wall and kills him. Now, there's two versions of the story. In one version, she finally is like, I did promise, so she kisses the frog. But in my favorite one, she chucks him against a wall. So, either when he's kissed or when he's dead, he turns into a prince. He's restored to his former self, and he's like, hey, you've broken me from my enchantment. And she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, I'm a handsome prince now. Isn't that a coinkydink? And she's like, sweet, you can be my best friend. And then they get married and live happily ever after. And no one ever mentions the murder thing again. Now there's another version of the story where there's this guy whose name is Iron Henrik, and he's got iron bands around his heart. And when the prince got turned into a frog, he put those on his heart so that his heart wouldn't break. And now his heart is so happy that the iron bands break and they think the carriage is falling apart. But it's not. It's just the servant so happy that his master has been restored to him. So yeah. That's the Frog Prince. It's a little more violent. Why hasn't Disney made that movie? I guess we can kind of count Princess and the Frog. I wouldn't. All right. Have a wonderful day.